6 early amusement parks. Take a trip through 6 of history's most enchanting and influential amusement parks. Steeplechase Park, 1936. Credit: Universal Images Group. Opened in 1897 by entrepreneur George C. Tilley. Steeplechase Park was the first of 3 major amusement parks that put New York's Coney Island on the map. The park took its name from its signature attraction, a 1,100-foot steel track where patrons could race one another on mechanical horses, but it also included a Ferris wheel, a space-inspired ride called O Trip to the Moon, and a miniature railroad. While Tilley intended Steeplechase to be the family-friendly antidote to Coney Island's seamier side, some rides still ventured into territory that was risque by Victorian standards. Attractions like the O Witch Away and the O Human Pool Table tossed strangers against one another and gave couples an excuse to canoodle, and the wildly popular Blowhole Theater allowed spectators to watch as air vents blew up unsuspecting female guests' skirts. As the ladies struggled to cover themselves, a clown would shock their male counterparts with a cattle prod. Fire destroyed much of Tilley's Park in 1907, but he responded by building a more elaborate steeplechase that remained in operation until the 1960s. Ever the showman, he even charged and cents for visitors to view the charred ruins of the original park. Vauxhall Gardens, 1751. For much of the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, the famed Vauxhall Gardens offered Londoners a much-needed respite from the grime and sprawl of the big city. Nestled on the south bank of the River Thames, this verdant pleasure garden consisted of several acres of trees and flowers, footpaths, and pavilions lit by thousands of shimmering gas lamps. For the price of 1 shilling, visitors could stroll through Vauxhall's lush groves, admire paintings and sculptures, and take in music performed by the site's house orchestra. The gardens also offered more unusual diversions, including a miniature diorama of a village mill and a resident hermit who told fortunes. By the 1820s, Vauxhall had begun to abandon high culture and refinement in favor of dancing and other more mainstream entertainments, and soon patrons could take in fireworks displays, ballooning exhibitions, and sideshow acts such as sword swallowers and tightrope walkers. Before shuttering Vauxhall's gates for good in 1859, the owners even used pyrotechnics and troops of actors to stage large-scale reenactments of Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Waterloo, Roman chariot races, and a Crusader attack on the city of Acre. Dreamland, 1905. Coney Island's Dreamland only operated for 7 years between 1904 and 1911. But during that time it established itself as one of the most ambitious amusement parks ever constructed. The brainchild of a former senator named William H. Reynolds, the site included a labyrinth of unusual rides and attractions lit by an astounding 1 million electric light bulbs. Visitors to Dreamland could charter a gondola through a recreation of the canals of Venice, brave gusts of refrigerated air during a train ride through the mountains of Switzerland, or relax at a Japanese tea house. They could also watch a twice-daily disaster spectacle where scores of actors fought a fire at a mock 6-story tenement building, or pay a visit to Lilliputian, a pint-sized European village where some 300 little people lived full-time. Dreamland featured everything from freak shows and wild animals to imported Somali warriors and Eskimos. But perhaps its most unusual offering was an exhibit where visitors could observe premature babies being kept alive using incubators, which were then still a new and untested technology. The infants proved a huge hit, but they and many other attractions had to be evacuated in May 1911, when a fire ironically triggered at a ride called the Hell Gate leveled the property and shut Dreamland down for good. Saltaire Pavilion, 1901. First opened in 1893. Saltaire was a desert oasis situated on the south shore of Utah's Great Salt Lake. The Mormon Church originally commissioned the site in the hope of creating a wholesome Coney Island of the West without the perceived sleaziness of the New York original. Their family-friendly park proved an instant hit, as scores of visitors arrived by train from nearby Salt Lake City to enjoy music, dancing, and bathing in the lake's saline-rich waters. Saltaire's most striking attraction was its gargantuan pavilion, a four-story wonder adorned with domes and minarets that sat above the lake on more than 2,000 wood pilings. Along with touring this pleasure palace on stilts, visitors could also show off their moves on a sprawling dance floor, ride roller coasters and carousels, and watch fireworks displays and hot air balloon shows. The park boasted nearly 500,000 visitors a year until 1925, when the iconic centerpiece burned in a fire. A rebuilt Salter opened soon after, but it failed to capture the magic or the revenues of the original. The park closed its doors for good in 1958, and its abandoned pavilion was later destroyed in a second fire in 1970. Tivoli Gardens. Entrance to Tivoli Gardens. Denmark's Tivoli Gardens first opened in 1843, when showman Georg Christensen persuaded King Christian VIII to let him build a pleasure garden outside the walls of Copenhagen. Originally constructed on around 20 acres of land, Carstensen's creation featured a series of Oriental-inspired buildings, a lake fashioned from part of the old city moat, flower gardens and bandstands lit by colored gas lamps. The park quickly became a Copenhagen institution, and won fame for its Tivoli Boys Guard, a collection of uniformed adolescents who paraded around the premises playing music for visitors. Tivoli later added an iconic pantomime theater in 1878, and by the early 1900s it featured more traditional amusement park fare, including a wooden roller coaster called the Bjergbanen, or a mountain coaster, as well as bumper cars and carousels. Tivoli Gardens was nearly burned to the ground by Nazi sympathizers during World War II, but the park reopened after only a few weeks and remains in operation to this day. Luna Park. Luna Park, 1913. Credit, LCDM Universal History Archive. Founded in 1903 by theme park impresarios Fred Thompson and Skip Dundee, Coney Island's Luna Park consisted of a gaudy cluster of domed buildings and towers illuminated by an eye-popping 250,000 light bulbs. The park specialized in high-concept rides that transported visitors to everywhere from 20,000 leagues under the sea to the North Pole and even the surface of the moon. A trip to Luna could also serve as a stand-in for world travel. After a ride on an elephant, patrons could stroll the simulated streets of Delhi populated by dancing girls and costumed performers, many of them actually shipped in from India, or take a tour through mock versions of Italy, Japan and Ireland. If they grew tired of walking, visitors could relax in grandstands and watch the War of the Worlds, a miniature, pyrotechnic heavy sea battle in which the American Navy decimated an invading European armada. The park's owners also cashed in on the popularity of disaster rides by staging recreations of the destruction of Pompeii and the Galveston flood of 1900. The carnage reenacted in these attractions became all too real in 1944, when Luna fell victim to a three-alarm fire that began in one of its bathrooms. The original site closed for good a few years after the blaze, but the iconic name Luna Park is still used by dozens of amusement parks around the globe.